This just in, a revealing new interview with really the most powerful person in President Trump's White House beyond him. Chief of Staff Susie Wilds commenting and going there on a wide range of topics, it seems, with Vanity Fair in a new series of interviews, from the handling of the Epstein investigation to her assessment of the big names on Donald Trump's team. Let's get to CNN's Elena Treen, who is at the White House. There seems to be a lot in there, Elena. What is your big takeaway?
This just in, a revealing new interview with really the most powerful person in President Trump's White House beyond him. Chief of Staff Susie Wilds commenting and going there on a wide range of topics, it seems, with Vanity Fair in a new series of interviews, from the handling of the Epstein investigation to her assessment of the big names on Donald Trump's team. Let's get to CNN's Elena Treen, who is at the White House. There seems to be a lot in there. Elena, what is your big takeaway? I mean, look, I've covered the president, and I've also covered Susie Wilds for years now, Kate, and this is one of the most candid interviews and stories that she's offered. Interviews she's offered, really. Now, let's talk about a major development.
There, Elena, what is your big takeaway?
I mean, look, I've covered the president, and I've also covered Susie Wilds for years now, Kate, and this is one of the most candid interviews and stories that she's offered, interviews she's offered.
If you thought the situation in the Trump administration couldn't get worse after that Texas election disaster, think again. On February 2nd, 2026, Susie Wilds made a big move. She just resigned, effective immediately. This is significant because she was the one supposed to keep everything running smoothly in the White House. Her reason for leaving, she cited irreconcilable differences over how Trump is dealing with the mountain of scandals piling up. And believe me, it's a mountain. Everything from the Texas election wipeout to the problems at the DOJ and the ethics officials stepping down, plus those Epstein files. It seems like Susie took a good look at the chaos and decided, I can't do this any longer. A machine online, and I mean, I've had 4 primaries, and the last 2 times from the right, I mean, there was a lot of focus. I wasn't loyal enough to Trump. I would have probably not run again earlier because there's other things I want to do in life. But I wanted to prove a point in our district that the majority supports common sense, decency, Reagan conservatism. And so I stayed in an extra run or two just to prove the, I don't know what you want to call them, the far right or the Trump loyalists, that he can do no wrong, and that crowd. And I wanted to run just to prove a point that the majority want decency and more of a Reagan Republican ideology. And so by 5 times was enough. You're ready. I'm ready for doing something else. All right. Well, thank you for all of your service. Congressman Don Bacon, thank you so much. Appreciate it very, very much. And this isn't just any run-of-the-mill resignation. This is a big deal. The chief of staff is usually the second most influential person in the administration, the one managing everything, making sure the White House runs smoothly. When they quit, it sends a strong message. And let me tell you, it raises some serious alarms. What makes this even more surprising is that Susie Wilds was one of Trump's most trusted individuals. She was brought in right after Trump won the 2024 election precisely because she had his confidence, having worked with him before and knowing how he operates. If someone like her throws in the towel, it really shows just how chaotic things are. She looked at the constant scandals and blame games and understandably thought, this is impossible.
Online, and I mean,
well, I've had 4 primaries, and the last 2 times from the right, I mean, there was a lot of focus. I wasn't loyal enough to Trump. I would have probably not run again earlier because there's other things I want to do in life, but I wanted to prove a point in our district that the majority supports common sense, decency.
To top it all off, her resignation came just hours after Fox News aired a pretty intense segment, which really adds to the drama. I found it quite amusing watching Trump get all defensive on Pete Hex after that Texas election loss. He was really fired up, shouting about rhinos, pointing fingers at Dan Patrick, and claiming it was just a small local glitch. Then, out of frustration, he seemed to snap at his own network for daring to ask some tough questions on February 1st. But here's where it gets interesting. Sources say he turned around and blamed WS for the loss. insisting she and her team did a terrible job getting out the vote. You know how Trump operates. He doesn't take bad news well and doesn't like admitting when he's at fault. His go-to move is to find someone else to blame. And in this situation, WS became the lucky scapegoat. It's kind of wild because the Texas loss was about way more than just one person. It stemmed from base fatigue, administration chaos, and all sorts of issues beyond the campaign itself. But that didn't stop Trump from singling her out. WS, who had been working her tail off, putting in 18-hour days to keep things running amid the chaos.
I don't know what you want to call them, the far right or the Trump loyalists that he can do no wrong, that crowd. And I wanted to run just to prove a point that the majority want decency and more of a Reagan Republican ideology. And so five times is enough.
You're ready.
I'm ready for doing something else.
All right. Well, thank you for all of your service.
Finally had enough. When she saw Trump pointing the finger at her, she was like, all right, I'm done. If you're going to pin your problems on me, I'm out. So she quit. Her resignation email, which got leaked to Axioms, was pretty eye-opening. She straight up said the constant scandals and blame game were making it impossible to govern, so she decided to walk away. That's a tough hit coming from the chief of staff, the very person who's supposed to keep everything in order and manage all the chaos. If she feels like governing has become impossible, things have spiraled out of control, it's a sign that the administration is in real trouble. And of course, Trump just had to respond. He posted on True Social saying, Susie did a great job, but fake news forced her hand. In his eyes, it's all about the media being the bad guy, making it sound like she had no choice but to quit because of them. So, here's the deal. Susie Wilds, who was Trump's chief of staff, just decided she couldn't take it anymore and walked away. According to Trump, this was her inability to handle things, but honestly, that's just him dodging any blame and pretending everything's fine. The truth is a little different. Susie took a hard look at the chaos surrounding her. She saw the endless scandals, the mess with the Department of Justice, the ethics officials resigning left and right, the trouble with the Epstein files, and that debacle in Texas during the election. All of it hit her at once, and she thought, I can't manage this. There's no way I'm going to waste my time trying to fix what seems unfixable. And with that, she quit. Can you believe she's the 7th major person to leave in just 2 months of 2026? 7 individuals. That's a staggering number and definitely not a healthy sign for any administration. It really shows that good people are looking around and saying, this isn't for me anymore. And when you start losing the ones who are genuinely working hard to make things happen, things are about to unravel. And that's when operations begin to fall apart completely. Now, let's dive into who Susie Wilds actually is and why her stepping down is such a big deal. This isn't just about losing a staff member. It's about losing someone who was meant to be the glue for the White House. She had been with Trump for a long time, originally working with him during his campaign. That gave her a solid understanding of how he worked, his style, and his quirks. When Trump won the 2024 election against Clay Harris and took the presidency, one of his first moves was to bring Susie on as his chief of staff. That role is incredibly crucial. Besides the president, nothing is more important in the White House. The chief of staff is the one who controls the flow of information, decides who can see the president, and determines what issues actually reach his desk. So let's talk about the chief of staff role in the White House. It's a pretty big deal, right? This person is responsible for making sure the president's agenda gets put into action, keeping everything running smoothly behind the scenes. Susie Wilds held that position for about 13 months and was seen as someone who really understood Trump. She knew his style, how he liked to operate, and how to manage his rather unpredictable ways. But here's the catch. Working with Trump isn't exactly a walk in the park. He's known for being hard to manage. He makes snap decisions, fires people without a second thought, and changes his mind like it's a new hobby. Keeping everything on track when chaos is the norm, that's no easy task, even for someone as experienced as Susie. But then things started to unravel. Reports say that Trump laid the blame for a recent election loss in Texas squarely on Susie and her team, claiming they didn't pull off the get-out-the-vote operations they were supposed to. He wasn't shy about pointing out that they spent over $1 million without seeing any results. So naturally, he said they didn't do their job right. Now, there might be some truth to that criticism. Perhaps the operations could have been better managed, or the resources used more wisely, however. The Texas loss was a lot deeper than just one piece of the puzzle. It had to do with the overall political climate, folks feeling worn out by ongoing scandals, the chaos from the Department of Justice, resignations from ethics officials, and that whole Epstein file mess. All of this created a perfect storm of dysfunction. But Trump zeroed in on one aspect and essentially told Susie, "This is your fault." This all led to Susie deciding to throw in the towel. In her resignation letter, she expressed that she'd been trying her best to keep things together in the middle of all that turmoil. And it sounds like she finally reached her limit. "I've been putting in 18-hour days, juggling crises nonstop, with all the chaos and scandals swirling around. I've been doing my best to keep this administration running smoothly. But now I'm being blamed for things that are totally out of my control, and I've had enough. The endless scandals and the blame game make it impossible to govern effectively. That's just the reality of the situation. When you're part of an administration dealing with Department of Justice scandals, when ethics officials are jumping ship and legal issues are piling up, not to mention the upheaval from the Epstein files, governance really suffers. It just becomes chaotic. And pointing fingers at the chief of staff for the fallout from all that chaos feels unfair. But that's just classic Trump. He doesn't handle bad news well, never takes responsibility for failures, and always seems to need a scapegoat. In this instance, I became that scapegoat. Forget the fact that I was actually one of the few trying to keep things on track, one of the few respected people in the West Wing. Losing me is just going to make the administration's job even tougher. But Trump just needed someone to blame, and I was the convenient choice. So let's consider what this means for the administration. I served for 13 months, which is actually the longest anyone has held the chief of staff position in Trump's second term so far. That speaks volumes. It shows just how transient this role has become, how incredibly challenging it is, and the high turnover rates we're seeing. When there's so much turnover in such a critical position, it breeds problems and instability. You lack continuity. And without someone who's been around long enough to establish relationships and get things done, it's just pure chaos. According to the Brookings Institution turnover tracker, my departure marks the 7th top aide to exit in 2026 alone, 7 in just 2 months. Now, that's a turnover rate of 45%. That's just wild. It's not normal or healthy, and it signals major internal issues within the administration. It's clear that talented people are leaving, and it's not a good sign. So it looks like some really good folks are taking a hard look at what's been going on and deciding to step away. When you're losing talented people, those who actually care about getting things done and governance, things really start to fall apart in an administration. Now let's connect the dots here with Wilds' resignation and everything else shaken out. This isn't just a standalone issue. It's happening alongside the Texas election disaster, the Department of Justice unraveling, ethics officials resigning left and right, and judges stepping in to block Trump's policies. It's all intertwined, creating a chaotic picture of an administration that's really struggling. The loss in Texas was a hard hit. It clearly showed that Trump's endorsement doesn't guarantee a win anymore. The base seems worn out, and turnout is becoming a major problem. Instead of seeing the bigger picture, Trump immediately jumped to blame WS for the failure to get out the vote, pointing fingers at one issue. But the reality is much more complicated. The entire administration is facing multiple crises crashing in all at once. The Department of Justice is in disarray, with ethics officials choosing to resign. Immigration judges are stepping in against temporary protected status provisions. And the whole Epstein file mess is adding fuel to the fire. While all this chaos swirls around, Trump is left trying to run the government and prep for the midterms, which is just too much. WS, who was meant to be the person managing all of this chaos, looked at the situation and realized she just couldn't handle it anymore. She thought, I can't continue doing this job. The constant scandals, the blame game, and the lack of solid leadership made her decision unavoidable. This really says something about how broken things are. Now, Trump is on the hunt for a new chief of staff, someone who can step into Wild's shoes and manage all this chaos, ensuring everything runs smoothly. That's not going to be an easy task either. So it's important to realize that the resignation of Susie Wilds is a big deal for the Trump administration. We're not just talking about losing one staff member here. We've lost the person who was supposed to keep everything running smoothly. Wilds was one of the most experienced folks around, really the backbone of the whole operation. She understood how to manage a large organization and had the respect of her colleagues along with the knowledge to get things done. Now, with her gone, I can't help but wonder who's going to take her place. The reality is those who truly excel at this job, those with the necessary experience and skills, are likely to look at the chaos of the situation and steer clear. They'll probably think, no thanks, I'm not stepping into that mess, and risk being blamed for things I can't control. That leaves Trump in a tough spot. He might end up having to choose someone who isn't as qualified, someone with less experience, which could lead to even more disarray within the administration. The chief of staff role is far from a mere ceremonial job. It's crucial for keeping the White House functioning. With Wild stepping down, we're likely to see some serious challenges ahead. So, the chief of staff role is really crucial. In the White House, they're the ones who manage the flow of information, set the agenda, and keep the government running smoothly. If the chief of staff isn't experienced or qualified, it can really cause things to spiral out of control and lead to chaos in the administration. And honestly, that's exactly the direction we're heading in right now. Wild's resignation sends a huge signal to everyone in the Trump administration, not just those who are there, but also those thinking about joining. When the chief of staff walks away because of constant scandals and the blame game, it really screams that this organization isn't functioning properly. It shouts, this isn't where you want to be if you're looking to do meaningful work. Current staffers who are on the fence about their jobs are probably looking at Wild's exit and thinking, maybe I should start looking elsewhere too. Then you've got potential recruits who see this resignation and think, yikes, that's a red flag. It all comes down to this. Without good people, you can't run an administration. You need talented staff to make government work. If skilled individuals are leaving and others are hesitant to come on board, things will just get worse in terms of governance. And we're already seeing that trend. 7 top aides left in 2026 and 7. And now with the chief of staff resigning, the situation doesn't look good. If more resignations happen, it'll just worsen the dysfunction within the administration. Plus, this all happens at such a critical time with primaries, midterms coming up in November, and major policy decisions looming. There's a lot on the plate, and losing a key operational leader in the midst of all of that couldn't be worse. So it looks like there's an open spot now in the White House, and honestly, nobody seems to be ready to take that on. I can just imagine Trump trying to scramble around to find a new chief of staff. Meanwhile, with that position empty, the White House is likely going to feel pretty chaotic and could really lack the strong leadership it needs to run smoothly. This situation is definitely catching the attention of the Democrats. They're seeing the chief of staff leave, the administration in disarray, and they're thinking it's the perfect time to make their move and push forward with their agenda. When the other side is all over the place, you can bet they'll want to take advantage of it. And the Democrats are totally going to do just that. On top of this, it really reinforces the idea that the Trump administration is crumbling for a while. That's probably going to be a major focus in the news. Headlines talking about how Trump's chief of staff quit, how there's chaos, or even how governing seems impossible. That's pretty rough for Trump's credibility and really doesn't help the administration function well. It's also tough on Republican morale when the chief of staff is basically saying the administration is broken, pointing out that constant scandals make it hard to govern. That's a huge statement. It echoes a lot of what folks have been thinking and really shines a light on the chaos surrounding the administration. I can see the Democrats using this to their advantage, saying something like, look, even Trump's closest people are bailing because things are such a mess. That's a compelling argument that can sway voters and impact elections. Now, if we look at the upcoming 2026 midterms, this situation creates a lot of challenges. The midterms are supposed to be the time when Republicans demonstrate their strength and hold on to control, and Trump needs to be at the forefront of that effort. Right now, Trump is scrambling to find a new chief of staff, and it's not exactly smooth sailing. Instead of concentrating on the midterms, he's busy dealing with the fallout from losing a key person in his administration. This kind of chaos is a huge distraction, taking away valuable energy that should be directed toward the elections. Meanwhile, the Democrats are definitely paying attention. They're noticing all the disarray in the Trump administration. The West Wing is in upheaval, and with all the resignations and the constant turnover, they're thinking, this is our chance. We can flip some seats and make gains. Now, let me break down how this all ties together. The recent loss in Texas kicked off a chain reaction. Trump pointed fingers at Susie Wilds, which led to her resignation. This creates even more chaos in an already shaky administration, making it tough for them to perform, especially with the midterms approaching. If this keeps up, the Democrats will have a real opportunity to take advantage of the Republican disorganization. It's like a story unfolding of the Trump administration unraveling at the seams. The big question is, how much further does this go? Is Wilds just the first in a line of resignations? Are more top officials going to jump ship? As the chaos and dysfunction grow, the administration risks becoming less effective. And by the time the midterms roll around, it could be in a really sorry state. An operation struggling to function, losing its talented people, that's a recipe for losing elections and seeing seats slip away in Congress. And that's precisely the situation that seems to be developing right now, with Wilds stepping down. Susie Wilds made the decision to resign. And honestly, who can blame her? Looking at the endless scandals and the blame games surrounding the administration, it's easy to understand why she threw in the towel governing under such conditions. It's a tall order. How can anyone lead when there's nonstop chaos and a staff that's feeling completely burned out and demoralized? Now, the Trump administration is left scrambling to find someone to take her place. The poor soul stepping into that role is going to face a situation that's even more chaotic than what Wilds just escaped. It's hard to imagine that they won't struggle if things don't go well, and let's be real, they likely won't. Trump is probably going to shift the blame onto them, leading to yet another resignation. It's a slippery slope that could lead to a complete collapse of the administration. So it's definitely worth keeping an eye on who Trump chooses for the next chief of staff. Just watching how long that person lasts will say a lot about whether the administration can hold it together over the next couple of years, or if it's just destined to fall apart. Even they are.